And everybody, welcome to Two Over Comics. And this episode, we're doing runs. Runs is back.
Yes. I miss doing runs. We took a break from a while. We really were doing a lot of Spider-Man, and we're, lo and behold, we're doing Spider-Man again. But, we love Spider-Man, so why not?
Spider-Man
coming out now.
When this whole thing started, I'm like, I'm going to record so many episodes of runs. I'm going to read so many comics. And, like, I haven't even thought about picking up a comic in probably, like, a month now.
That's what I said about video games. Once I learned how to edit, I think I'm doing a pretty good job editing. I'm going to do so many, and then now this whole COVID-19 thing happened. And I'm like, as I mentioned before in the previous podcast we just recorded, I have no one to bounce off of. So I'm like, oh, so yeah, the Golden Axe was really great, and this just happened in the game. So anyways, back to what I was really thinking, like I can't bounce off of you and Woody because you're not here. Hey, Gooch, come here.
I can blame COVID-19, but it's not COVID-19. The minute there's an inkling of something becoming work, I immediately shut down. I was like, I told my wife when I was in high school, I originally planned on being like, oh, I'm going to work for like Marvel or DC, drawing comics. And then like, people, why don't you apply your art to like, something you can make money off of? I'm like, because as soon as it becomes work, I don't want to do it anymore. The same thing, like, I'm going to read so many.
Like drinking draw now.
Oh, yeah.
For you.
But anyway, so this episode of Runs, we're going to be talking about issues. And these issues are written by Michael Stracynski, which I think I'm saying his name right. I think he's Polish, Stracynski, or Russian maybe. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell with that ski.
Yeah.
But so he let's get right into it, Mike. This is as far as like your runs on Spider-Man. Where do you rate this? And
I would say it's probably definitely my top 10. He definitely had a lot of good things. He definitely had some ups and downs. Yeah. Get into that. Most notably, his two big stingers. I would say, don't worry, we're gonna take you for a walk after this. I know you will lay you down here. Was Sins Past, and you're shaking. Are you cold? I'll hold you and hug you because I love you. One More Day, which I've heard rumors that it was kind of his idea, and at the same time it wasn't, because he brought back the marriage.
I've heard that this was the One More Day was he had an entirely different. He was basically given the directions like, hey, we want to reverse the marriage, and he had like an entirely different story, and that story I guess got shut down, which involved like time travel and everything else.
His name wasn't even on the credits, so to speak, or
he wanted his name taken off, I guess. But as far as I think Stracynski's run is probably my number 3 in my top. So my runs of Spider-Man. I think Roger Stern, then Jerry Conway.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. I think Jerry Conway, then Stan Lee, then Stracynski.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Ultimate Spider-Man. When it was really good, Bendis, he's in my top 10.
Yeah.
Stern too. Basically, almost anyone who's written Amazing Spider-Man at least is in my top 10.
Yeah, that's the thing. When people talk about Spider-Man comics and they say, I'm usually talking about Amazing Spider-Man, like the flagship title.
Yeah.
So I guess we can kind of explain, like, when Stracynski came on the book, where Spider-Man was in comics anyway. For me, I was kind of checked out of Spider-Man. I think it was like 2000 or 2001 when he started his run. Before that, there was the Clone Saga was over. Howard Mackie they rebooted it with Howard Mackie, and he just would not stop writing Spider-Man. And then like John Byrne came on. It's like, oh, I like John Byrne's like Fantastic Four.
Well, John Byrne is definitely not in my top 10 of Amazing Spider-Man.
Well, I like 80s John Byrne, but then when it wasn't the 80s anymore, I'm like, okay, I don't really care about you anymore, John Byrne.
He tried to do his own reboot too. It's obvious that whenever any writer comes on to the book, they do their own type of reboot, soft reboot. And I think JMS's was a big reboot, soft reboot. And when Brian was on the Amazing Spider-Man book, it was a kind of a major reboot. They had get their power at the same time and whatnot. They had that whole Chapter 1 retelling of Spider-Man's origin and all that. And they tried to make that canon. But JMS definitely he brought back Spider-Man back to being popular again.
Well, the thing with that, I mean, with Spider-Man at that time is like they were already testing the waters for separating Peter and Mary Jane. Yeah. They did a thing where after they rebooted, where they killed off Mary Jane. But before that, they were still like in the kind of like almost like an open relationship where Mary Jane was focusing on her like acting, modeling career, and that she was living with Peter. And it was kind of like implied that they were like Peter was reluctantly people were flirting with him, and he was kind of reluctant to even like accept.
Yeah, Gwen Stacy's cousin was
Stacy. And, like Mary Jane was like, like super into like other guys, like dating other guys while he was away. So I think they were kind of like, oh, what if we turn her into like, a hoe bag? Then it'll justify them getting divorced, But then they tried like killing her off during Mackie and Byrne's run, and people did not like that at all. So they immediately made it so like she was definitely kidnapped. She definitely kidnapped guys. She's not dead. But they were still trying to test the waters, that whole single Peter Parker. And for me, John Burns and Howard Mackey's Spider-Man, it wasn't offensively bad for me. Like there's things like with Spider-Man comics, as long as you stay true to the character, that's fine. Which I think Byrne and Mackey, they did. They understood the voice of Spider-Man. They were just really boring, and it was just like
Mackey was burnt out. He was for a while. He was definitely burnt out. We touched upon that in the Dan Slott run, where Dan Slott was kind of turning into Mackey. He was burnt out. I just didn't like the John Byrne Chapter 1 New Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, I collect every Amazing Spider-Man book because I want to get a complete run as much as possible. I never stopped reading Amazing Spider-Man. I've had every terrible one, every up and down run that they've done, or runs, or even with the Spectacular. I have a complete run of Spectacular now too. So I've been there thick and thin through every ups and downs.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like people like Dan Slott, like I stopped buying Spider-Man because it was offensive to me because he was like, he didn't understand the voice of Peter Parker, and he was making the character act how I think he shouldn't have acted in any way. And so I dropped the book because it was just shit and I couldn't read it. With Byrne and Mackey, it was just like, it wasn't like they were like being offensive about it, but it was like, there's like better books for me to spend my money on right now at the time.
I mean, like I said, I kept collecting all Dan Slott's run, even the bad crap they was doing. It was just, for me, I was reading through it real quick, thumbing through it real quick, and I was going right. I followed it right away. I mean, like I said, we both know that I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I think
you're like a battered wife when it comes to Spider-Man. You're a battered spouse when it comes to Spider-Man.
We get teased. You guys all know that we love Ben Reilly, and Dan Slott, most of all, has been teasing us with that probably since the beginning of his run.
Yeah,
he's held that whole Ravage storyline, I think it was, where they introduced Kane, but I don't want to go back into the Dan Slott run.
I actually need to stop us right now because we're getting so far off track right now.
We always do that.
We're talking about Michael Stracynski's run. He started in issue 30. This one almost
20 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2001.
I was rereading the issues. I'm like, holy shit, this was almost 20 years ago.
I knew nothing about JMS besides he wrote. I didn't know anything about Babylon 5. I had never seen an episode of Babylon 5. I know he wrote Rising Stars for Top Cow, which I liked.
That's where I knew him from. And Rising Stars. And then I heard they did Babylon 5. And then after he did the Superman 2, after he did Spider-Man, it was kind of like a lackluster.
Well, he did Superman Earth 1, which is really good.
Superman Earth was amazing. I have those on my shelf back there.
The thing with this run too is it almost didn't happen because I guess Joe Quesada, when he first took over Marvel, was basically trying to get Spider-Man and X-Men back on track. Yeah. And I guess he he had called Grant Morrison and J. Michael Stracynski and
Mm.
had both of them on the phone at the same time. I guess he ended up getting on the phone with Morrison first and was like, Spider-Man or X-Men? And Morrison was like, I have no interest in Spider-Man whatsoever, but I have a pitch for X-Men. And that's the only reason that Straczynski ended up getting Spider-Man, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if he would have took
I
X-Men.
don't think I would have liked Morrison's Spider-Man,
No,
honestly.
I don't think so either. But I'm a huge Grant Morrison fan, but I don't think I would have liked the direction he took, especially at that time.
I liked his X-Men. I loved his Dick Grayson Batman. I didn't care for his when Bruce Wayne came back, what he did with Bruce Wayne, but yeah,
I feel like he would have purposely fucked with Spider-Man during that time. But that's neither here nor there. Straczynski ended up taking over the book. And I figured, like, you know what? The thing that really sold me, if I'm being honest with you, is the J. Scott Campbell covers, which at that time, J. Scott Campbell was just finished Cliffhanger stuff with Danger Girl. Him and Hugh Burr Ramos were both, like, they've never touched Spider-Man before. I don't think he'd even done any Marvel work before. And now they were doing these covers, and I was like, you know what? I'll check this out. I'm checking out Spider-Man. I'm mostly buying DC, but I'll check this out.
And he's one of those artists that drew Spider-Man muscular but scrawny. That's why I love Mark Bagley so much, his artwork, because he drew him muscular but scrawny.
Yeah,
like Bruce Lee basically cut.
If we're talking about the art, also too, John Romita Jr. comes back.
He was in prime.
And here's the thing: I was not excited when I heard that he was still staying on the title.
Yeah.
I was like, really? I'm like, I could not stand him at the time, but then this is where he really hit his prime as an artist. I think it's probably his definitive work.
You know what the thing is? It takes him a while to get the character right.
Yep.
He did Spider-Man back in the day with his father. During I know he did during that awesome Nothing Stops the Juggernaut storyline and amazing way back when. So he inked his father's work, I believe, or vice versa, back in the day. So when he was on full time during the Mackie run, it wasn't until the end of the Mackie run where he really found his prime, his Spider-Man.
I think right before the reboot.
Yeah,
really good.
And before he drew Spider-Man too bulky. I mean, Romita's artwork always seems rushed no matter what, and you can definitely tell when he was doing
deadline artist.
Yeah, when he was doing Kick-Ass and he was doing some other Marvel stuff, real briefly, bye Gooch. When he was doing Avengers, you can definitely tell that was rushed.
Oh yeah,
just mailing it in because he was doing all his great work on Kick-Ass and Kick-Ass 2 at the time. So Romita's hit or miss for me, honestly.
Well, in this book, I mean, right from the very first splash page, you have that big splash of him going over the city's all like lit up, like all golden, like those colors, and it looks phenomenal. And he has who is it? I think Scott Hanna inking him and liquid coloring, and it's just like a perfect storm of art on this book.
Why I remember like when he did the Avengers, Scott Hanna was inking his work. Clearly, Scott Hanna was not inking his work. I think he was just getting the credit for it, which is fine.
Yeah,
but
a lot of artists that really makes a difference is whoever's like inking their work.
So a lot JMS introduced a lot into this.
Yeah.
And you know, Dan Slott took a lot from him of Ezekiel and the Spider-Verse of Mullen, but he introduced Ezekiel in this. He introduced the first Mullen storyline.
He basically does the Spider Totem, introduced the Spider Totem aspect of the Spider-Man. A little bit of a mystery.
And he did a soft reboot with, like I said before, every writer does a soft reboot.
Not a reboot, more of a retcon, pretty much.
Retcon, yeah. He wanted to make Spider-Man, like I said, more supernatural, more Spider Totem. You know, all of Spider-Man's villains were animal-based type villains. He also did where Harry and Gwen went to school with him, high school with him instead of college.
Was that in chapter 1 or was that during JMS's run?
That was during JMS's run. It was just a brief flashback story or couple of panels. What else? I'm totally not looking at my notes right now because I remember that's all to a T. This was the time when the Spider-Man movie was coming out, so they kind of wanted to make him more Spider.
You're getting way out of here. Well, I mean, are you going to do the organic webbing thing?
So yeah, like, well, there's around the same time this is just briefly. It was around the same time in the Spectacular where they did the Avengers Assemble, and he got organic webbing and all that. Because that kind of leads into all of those storylines with the other and all that he introduced with the second Mullen storyline where Peter died and he came back. They had the 9/11 issue as well.
Well, the beginning, my favorite thing they introduced in this was basically, well, besides Moreland, which is a brand new villain, Ezekiel, brand new character, and that whole new mythology, the Spider Totem. They also, I think the first issue, the second issue, Peter Parker becomes a school teacher.
Yeah, I always liked that he became a school teacher. He went back. They introduced that a lot of times when they come on, they always going to say that they're going to do. Did you freeze or lag? I thought you froze for a second. Your screen.
I was looking down.
They always say they're going to do. Oh, we're going to do more of a Peter Parker in this, and they do that in the beginning. But what was solid throughout this whole run with JMS is it was like an equal level of making Spider-Man be more popular with the other heroes, as well as building up Peter Parker. Being a teacher. And this is what I know we kind of disagreed on this about him revealing his identity to the other superheroes, which I always liked, and him becoming an Avenger, which I absolutely loved. He kind of built Peter up. He changed him from being that Peter Parker that was always taking pictures for the Bugle, never really evolving Peter or really evolving Spider-Man either. And this was the era where they evolved Peter. He became an Avenger. The superheroes started to respect him because they knew who he was and whatnot. And this was like my favorite era of Spider-Man.
See, I think the superheroes have always respected him. They just they just don't mesh with them really. I think really. I think Spider-Man. I don't know. I don't think Spider-Man works as a measure at all. I hate the idea of him being on any team.
Well, I see. I'm on the fence with that because I loved him as a new Avenger because new Avengers always seemed more street level. When he was on the premier Avengers team, or Romita was doing it, I didn't really care for that Avengers team, him being on there. Spider-Man can still hold his own against any of the Avengers, I think. Not Thor, obviously, but I absolutely loved him on the new Avengers. This was when Bennett was in time too.
He just serves no purpose on the Avengers. Like if you're on a team with Tony Stark, there's no need, or Hank Pym, there's no need for Peter Parker. Like what is he going to do? I mean, unless you're like all your battles are in alleys or in close quarters, there's no need to have Spider-Man around.
Well, that's why I liked him on the new Avengers. I always liked how X-Men had different teams, even though Wolverine was still on all of them. But I kind of like this was the era where there was two Avengers teams. I felt like. And Avengers was its own book, and then New Avengers was its own book as well. To this day, I still think it should be separate Avengers teams, but with the way the market's going, you can't have two Avengers books. But I don't know. Just for me, this is my favorite era of Spider-Man.
This is one of my favorite eras of Marvel altogether. There's so many good books coming out this time. The status quo Marvel is great. Right before Civil War, and then things kind of went a little crazy after that. But you have Peter Parker, him and at the by the way, by the end of the reboot, Mackie and Burns run, they separate Peter Parker and Mary Jane, so they're off doing their own thing. They're not divorced, but they're separated. Yeah. And Mary Jane, they're doing the whole thing where they're missing phone calls and blah blah blah. And Peter's, like we said, he takes a job as a science teacher at his old high school, which I think is a great, it keeps him with kids. And keeps them based in New York, and the thing about the whole Straczynski's whole run, he evolved the character so much and introduces all these new aspects. But there's something very familiar about it, very like Steve Ditko and Stan Lee, that kind of thing. One of my favorite lines, he does the jokes are great, they're appropriate, they're not forced.
Yeah, I love. My biggest thing is whenever someone says get in your costume, like Ezekiel will say get your costume. Or I think I'll make. Oh, also. In this, but one of my things I liked about it most was someone would say, "Peter, get your costume." He's like, "No, my uniform." Yeah, it's my uniform. Like there was a line where he's like, "Well, cops and firefighters wear uniform, so why can't we wear a uniform?" I always loved that. There was a part where Mary Jane and Peter Parker go meet each other on the opposite sides of the coast,
Yeah.
And then they meet up in like Denver, Colorado, because like Doctor Doom is someone's trying to kill Doctor Doom, and they got to land and all that jazz.
Oh, that issue is great.
And I love where this issue where Captain America is disguised as a security guard.
Yeah.
And Doctor Doom, we all know how Doctor Doom, whenever he talks, it's all in capital letters. Captain America, though the security guard as Captain America goes, "Why are you talking capital letters all the time like that?" And like Doctor Doom's like, "Silence, minion, or I will destroy you," or some shit like that. And like, I love that part.
There's that whole scene, and it's John Wright Romita, and where the whole battle's going on, and then Peter's trying to get Mary Jane out of safety, and the whole time, Mary Jane just like yelling at him the entire time, like because like she's kind of getting a lot of like her frustration, pent up frustration out of him during this whole thing. They're trying to have a talk, but it's getting interrupted by Spider-Man again, and that's Mary Jane's whole issue is like Spider-Man gets in the way of everything, and there's one sitting there.
She always felt like a mistress, or like there was like a girl, and like he never your superhero friends.
There's one part where they're sitting there and like and so they're kind of catching their breath for a second. Him and Mary Jane with him in his costume, and she goes, "And another thing, you never introduced me to any of your friends." And he's like, "Hey." But it's great beats like that. One of my
funny again too. Like he made him more wisecracky, Spidey.
Yeah, appropriately, not like Slott or Spencer. I mean, I do like Spencer's run, but there's a lot of times where it feels like, okay, like joke, like, like smother it and joke, like like a sauce. But it's like it's funny when the jokes come organically.
Well, the only problem I had with Spencer's run, the biggest thing, and I mentioned that on our podcast, is that he made all the superheroes distrust Spider-Man again because of that one scene where the Kingpin faked someone in a Spider-Man suit.
That's a Marvel thing. It's like a Marvel thing right now where Spider-Man has to do that.
Like, the heroes would know that Peter Parker wouldn't do that. They know, regardless of the fact if they think Spider-Man's annoying, or not. They know he's a hero. They know he wouldn't like. In the beginning of Spider-Man's career, the heroes might think that during the Stan Lee Ditko Romita run, original Romita Senior run, but nowadays they would know that Spider-Man wouldn't take a picture next to Kingpin like that. So
I don't know where this mandate comes from, where like everybody before. Okay, we'll say Dan Slott came in and goes, "Oh, Spider-Man, everybody, all the Avengers think he's a loser."
Yeah,
because that's the way they've always thought. The Marvel Universe sees Spider-Man as a loser. Nick Spencer's like, everybody sees Spider-Man as a loser. Not until those writers came on board do I ever recall any of the Marvel Universe ever thinking Spider-Man was a loser. Also, it's like this imaginary like memory they have, like oh, Spider-Man's always been a loser. It's like, no, he hasn't. You just made that up now, and like you're trying to make it seem like the way it's always been. But anyway,
they're living in the teenage Peter Parker years where the heroes couldn't really trust him. They didn't know if he was a menace or not. And as Spider-Man got more experience, the heroes started to like him more. They still thought he was annoying. I mean, I know that Captain America saying, you're a great superhero, but you can be, the wisecracks and all that jazz. But
it's like a Mandela effect thing with these vitamins. They think Spider-Man. No, he's never been like that. But anyway, Straczynski's run.
That's our problem when we do anything about Spider-Man. We just go off on tangents because we love the character so much.
Another great aspect was the Aunt May. Finally, a writer who could write the hell out of who made Aunt May a three-dimensional character. There's that issue where we'll kind of before we get to the reveal. There's one part where he's fighting, where he has his first knockdown, drag-out fight with Moreland, who is just beating the crap out of him. And Peter Parker just calls up Aunt May on a payphone in the middle of it and just say, "Hey, but he doesn't like lead on. There's like a battle going on like that. He's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I love you." And she's like, "Oh, Peter, what's wrong?" And he's like, "Nothing. I just just want to let you know I do, no matter what happens in life, And such cool moments like that, where and Mom May's you can see the look in her face where she's like, "Peter, what? Something's. I can tell something's wrong," and he won't let her know that anything's wrong, even though he thinks he might die. And of course, as a reader, he's not going to die.
Yeah.
But just like that moment makes it seem much more urgent, much more dangerous than it has been in the comics in a long time. There's another scene where he's in a fight, and there's one part where he makes a joke where he says, "Hey, is anybody got a can of spinach on hand?"
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember that joke. I thought that was so funny where he goes, "Anybody got a can of spinach?" He made people like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, forget it. No one watches cartoons anymore."
This also goes back to what we were talking about. Like he said, "I'm not going to go down alone. There'll be people that will come after you," knowing that he's respected. And JMS really pushed Spider-Man up to the forefront as a flagship character in this run. Where, you know, you can definitely tell that he definitely loved Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah. Well, I apparently there was a Doctor Strange miniseries that he has written that was supposed to come out. They even have
there's two times where you get close to the issue 500 where in the beginning, we'll come back to that. We'll find out what he means by that. He apparently was going to do 2 miniseries, or it might have been the same one, but
there's editor's notes in the books to a book that never came out that was supposed to come up and don't exist.
Yeah.
The right Doctor Strange.
He had Doctor Strange in there a lot, and he really liked that supernatural aspect.
I did too. I always like Doctor Strange and Spider-Man hanging out. It's pretty cool. Throughout they introduced a lot of cool new villains. The Shade. There's some mob villain that they made out of like different mob body parts.
Yeah, there was the Wasp, which was another. That was right before Mary Jane and Peter got together. So that was before the Doctor Doom issue in Colorado, where they meet up in Colorado. Also, this kind of like set the stage. We kind of decided to see what type of character Ezekiel was. Yeah. That there was kind of a reason why he was saving Peter Parker from Ezekiel, was that, and this also kind of happens, like where we introduced the Gatekeeper. The Gatekeeper, where this how introduced how Ezekiel got his powers. That I didn't realize this until after I read it a second time, that Ezekiel was actually saving Peter so that he could sacrifice Peter to Gatekeeper so that Ezekiel could live.
Okay.
And then Ezekiel ends up sacrificing himself at the end, but of that story.
I remember back in the day when this film was going on, and back during the pre-social media days, where I was on the Wizard World message boards, and people were trying to figure out who Ezekiel was, and people thought like it was like a future version of Peter Parker come back and stuff. And yeah, I mean, a lot of cool storylines. Like you mentioned, I guess then. It goes. Ramita said
was one of the biggest parts of it was May finally finds out who Peter is.
For some reason, I thought we just talked about that, but I guess we didn't. But yeah,
going up to it. We go on tangents with Spider-Man. That's how we roll.
But yeah, Peter gets the shit kicked out of him, and then like he's so exhausted, he goes home and just falls asleep in his like bloody, ripped up Spider-Man costume. And Aunt May walks in and sees the costume, and just like. There's an entire issue where she like doesn't even talk to him about it. She just keeps soaking in, and it's handled so great. Like honestly, Aunt May should. Peter Parker's a coward for not telling Aunt May who he is in comics right now.
This was where they started to make Aunt May a stronger character.
Yeah,
she wasn't always the weakling Aunt May that unfortunately Stan Lee and everyone else made her out to be. This made her a really strong and like character where she wasn't always the sickly Aunt May where Peter Parker had to rush to go, skip a crime to go save Aunt May. So I really JMS really boosted a lot of the characters and made them more
great job with that.
Yeah. He did it with Mary Jane, he did it with Peter.
Like Aunt May, if you're gonna kill Aunt May and then reveal that she was a genetically altered actress and bring her back, at least do something with her. And like I think JMS did a great job, made her a great, strong character. The interactions with her and the other superheroes was great. She made a great character.
I like how she like her and Wolverine, she would just take a cigarette out of his mouth. And Wolverine's like, what? And then they kind of had like a little love thing with her too.
I like also how she could talk to Captain America a lot because they're from the same generation. Yeah. I was like, oh my late husband Ben used to love you. And that was pretty cool.
So Mary James was along. He introduced a lot of his own stuff, and there was also a lot of tie-ins. Like there was a new Avengers tie-in with Peter being in the Avengers, a Civil War. The Civil War Fallout, where he was on the run. So this was a really big time for Marvel, and it was, like I said before, it was definitely one of my favorite eras of Spider-Man.
This was almost a whole new landscape for Marvel at the time,
Yeah.
the beginning of Joe Quesada's era. Other than,
I don't think, honestly, that if JMS wasn't doing Spider-Man, I don't think he would have been an Avenger. I don't think. Maybe
that was all Bendis who wanted.
You're right. Yeah, but like, it was just a great time to be a Spider-Man fan for me. I know we disagreed on him being a new Avenger, but
I remember when
great time to be a Spider-Man fan.
It absolutely was. I remember when this book was coming out and Paul Jenkins' Peter Parker Spider-Man was coming out and Ultimate Spider-Man was coming out, and I'm like, God damn! Never in a million years I think I'd have 3 great Spider-Man titles coming out all at once. Back then, it wasn't as common as it is now. A good Spider-Man.
And we only have one good Spider-Man book, and we had what was it? Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man came back. And then they brought back Friendly Neighborhood. Well, Spectacular came back. They canceled that. And then that replaced Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. But
we get that Joe Kelly Unstoppable Spider-Man comic coming out that I can't wait for, because I love Joe Kelly.
Hopefully it'll be good.
But anyway, another thing I like to when Aunt May found out that Peter was Spider-Man, before she even talked to Peter about it, the first thing she does is not confront Peter. Mm-hmm. She goes right to the Daily Bugle and goes to Jameson and goes, "I'm canceling my subscription." And you find out that she's gonna be a champion for Spider-Man. Spider-Man's like cheerleader pretty much, and like Jameson's like oh hey, and he's kind of like just and so that's the only way you can make a difference is like with your dollar pretty much. That becomes newspapers anyway. And from there on out, Aunt May became a great supporting character. There was no more her in the dark when it came to Spider-Man. It was great seeing her react to that. JMS got Peter and Mary Jane back together. It's like JMS was like enough of this bullshit of the separation. Will they? Won't they? Look, they're together, and this is how you write a married couple. Because it shouldn't be that hard to write a married couple. 2 people who are happy and in love. I think a lot of these comic book writers exercise their regrets in the high school or girls who broke up with them through Peter Parker.
And they did a great job with Peter's like, I'm a better person, I'm a better Spider-Man because of you, Mary Jane.
Yeah.
And I always felt that that was a missing thing, that Mary Jane was just kind of a side supporting character. Now she's the main supporting character along with Aunt May, honestly.
Always been Spider-Man's support system. And I mentioned this, I did an episode of my favorite super comic book couples. Mm. A lot of people think the beginning of the Mary Jane romance was when she opened the door and faced the tiger. The beginning of their relationship, when they became a serious one of the great loves in comics, is when Gwen Stacy dies and Peter Parker is losing his shit. And Mary Jane comes over and to comfort him, and he's just get the hell out of here. I don't want to ruin your good time. Yeah. And rather than be the Mary Jane she's been all her life, she decides to change for Peter and just shuts that door at the end. And that's where they became Peter and Mary Jane, one of the best couples in comics. But yeah, so I mean, then obviously we John Romita Jr. stays on Straczynski's run for the bulk of it, and then we go into Mike Deodato Jr.
And this is when they kind of started doing. This is when he was on New Avengers, and they started the second Moreland storyline.
Yeah, this is a little before. Well, yeah, this is during New Avengers, a little before Civil War. Civil War, where things kind of go bonkers. And when John Romita Jr. is also where Straczynski's run kind of goes a little bonkers, where they do. There's a couple of good stories. There's at the end of Straczynski's Romita Jr.'s run, the one where they do it to Spider-Man throughout the ages, where he has that costume to jacket.
Oh my god, I absolutely fucking love that. The last
birthday.
Yeah.
And you get to see Uncle Ben for 1 hour or something like that, whatever.
Yeah. That was around the time when they were where Doctor Strange issue where it says Spider-Man's I've earned that trust. They're listening to me. Yeah. And for me as a Spider-Man fan, where it was years and years of, not really taking Spider-Man seriously. They liked him, they respect him, but they didn't really take him seriously. As a superhero. And this was why my favorite era of Spider-Man, being a big Spider-Man fan. I always felt that Spider-Man can hold his own with all the other Avengers. He's just as strong as most of the other Avengers. He's a superhero. And this is why it was my favorite time, because they made Spider-Man important, not only to bring him back to us fans, but as a hero in the Marvel universe, they made him important, and that's what I really liked.
Also during JMS and John Romita's run, right slap dab in the middle of, I think right at the beginning or in the middle of it, 9/11 happens.
Yeah.
And they have that 9/11 issue where they were the only, I think they were the only Marvel book to really directly deal with 9/11. And what better character than Spider-Man, honestly. It wasn't a silent issue, I don't think. No, it wasn't a silent issue.
No, that. I think that was Aunt May's Day in the Park or something like that. I think.
But I mean, honestly, the art, beautiful art. I mean, John Romita, native New York. Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure, and he's always been good at drawing. The city has always been like a character in itself, and during his run of Spider-Man. Yeah. But it's handled perfectly. You have Spider-Man, helping out with the first responders and responding to their tragedy. There's that one corny moment where Dr. Doom's kind of crying. I mean,
even Kingpin
they're all kind of caught up in that moment. Yeah. But I mean, beautiful issue. That made new. I think it was one of the first comics to make headlines in the news besides Death of Superman.
It was because that was right in the middle of the. I think it was 4 or 5 issues into JMS's run.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of the Moreland storyline, and it says that we hate to interrupt this regularly scheduled program.
Yeah, right. And they handled it perfectly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, then we get into Deodato Jr. comes in. And to me, I mean, this is where first of all, I'm not a big fan of Deodato Jr.'s art at all. He used to, back in the 90s, he drew Hulk for a little while. I used to like it, but then he started doing this photorealism type style.
He's one of those ones that started off strong, but it seemed like he couldn't. Because I think Spider-Man was bi-monthly then, I believe.
This is not the character for him, I don't think.
Yeah, it seemed rushed for him. A lot of it seemed rushed, which I wasn't too keen on. Some of it's some of the stuff wasn't that great, especially during the other storyline.
Well, that comes after the first story we're going to talk about, which is which I mean,
I was mainly just really I wasn't going to jump shark, but just his artwork was really not that great. But
if there's one thing that could have took the taste out of people up until that point, the Clone Saga was the big the sour taste in the mouth of Spider-Man fans. They couldn't get it. This one completely.
I'm a Spider-Man fan.
An entirely new poison was this one, where Spider-Man starts getting these letters, and then he makes the big reveal where when Gwen Stacy back in the day left New York and went to Europe, she hooked up with Norman Osborn.
This one kind of resonates what I've been through with my ex and all that shit. Like they made Gwen Stacy a cheating whore. Basically,
I went a little too far. You're slut shaming right now.
She did cheat on Peter, and
they were together, though.
But Peter made it seem like we didn't even have sex, but she goes and bangs.
It was always implied that Peter and Gwen they were each other's firsts. Yeah. That's what was always implied, but now it's revealed that it wasn't the case at all. Yeah. Well, didn't they reveal also that Peter and Gwen Stacy never had sex?
Yeah, because Peter said we never. Because the thing with the storyline was she goes to Europe, to France, hooks up with Norman Osborn, gets pregnant, and these kids are claiming to be Peter Parker's kids, and Peter's like, these aren't my kids. We never had sex, because this was like Peter and Mary Jane just got back to being together as a couple. They just dealt with that whole Wasp storyline. Yeah. Not Janet Van Wasp, but where that Wasp character was saying, "Oh, I'm Spider-Man's lover and all that. He's a freak and he's married." Oh, blah blah blah. So they just got past that, wall, and then now they get to this one where they're saying, "Peter, you have kids." But no, I never even had sex with Gwen Stacy.
I think we can get past the whole virginity or slut shit. I think it's just the idea of Gwen Stacy, the most innocent character in the Spider-Man mythos, having sex with his greatest villain is disgusting. And not only that, just I mean, as much as I don't like Deodato Jr., he's a pretty good storyteller, and the whole scene where it's just very off-putting and and
right up there with the Dan Slott storyline where he's in Doc Ock's body and he sees a memory of Doc Ock and Aunt May getting on. That's up there with that.
Well, that's one good. But if I can go back a little bit, is that same issue where Doctor Octopus? There's one issue where there's a new Doctor Octopus, guy who stole Doctor Octopus's tech is fighting, and one part where Otto's there, and then he sees Aunt May, and she's like, Otto, he's like May, and that was kind of a cool scene. But anyway, back to this story we're talking about right now. So anyway, it gets revealed that these kids are actually the children of Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn because of the goblin juice going through Norman's body. These kids get age at an accelerated rate, and they have goblin powers. There's two of them, Gabriel, and I forget the other one's name.
Yeah, Sarah. I think it was Sarah.
Yeah. By the end of it, they confront.
What's even worse? Sorry to interrupt. They brought these characters into the Spectacular Spider-Man issues. They did a follow up to this awful storyline in Spectacular. They tried to make that Sarah Stacy fall in love with Peter.
Oh well, she died in the storyline, didn't she?
No, she didn't die. She gets shot by the police or something on top of the not Brooklyn Bridge, George Washington Bridge, whatever bridge it was. And
right?
Yeah, they try to, but in the Spectacular one, but yeah. I put in my notes for this on my phone, because I copied it real quick yesterday onto my notebook. I just put Sins Past, enough said, and I just went on from there, because
Google Spider-Man Sins Past and get all the nitty gritty.
Of all the things that got retconned in one more day, I'm glad this is one of them that did.
Storyline after this, yeah, I know. Storyline after this is probably one of my least favorite Spider-Man stories of all time. Is The Other, which basically
before that, real quick, they did some new Avengers stuff. Then they went into The Other.
Yeah, but the Other is basically a storyline where Moreland and Ezekiel come back, and so Spider-Man gets well. How did the whole thing start off?
The Ezekiel wasn't really part of this. It was just we start off with Spider-Man dying due to the radioactivity in his blood. So this goes back to J.M.S. wanting to make Spider-Man more natural, what he kind of started off with when in his first run. Spider-Man's dying, and Peter Parker Spider-Man is dying, and Moreland is just around the corner in the shadows, basically it starts off with Spider-Man fighting with the Avengers with this computer weirdo guy, and it gets revealed with that fight because he tastes his blood. He's like, "Oh, you're dying. I'm fighting a half-witted Spider-Man or Spider-Man."
Peter Parker Spider-Man, was that what's his name? Mendel Strom, where he was
no, that was in Peter Parker John Jenkins run, whatever. Paul Jenkins, sorry, yeah. But he starts to reveal that Peter Parker's dying. He has to tell Aunt May, and the whole thing is Peter Parker just living his life the best he can. He brings Mary Jane up into a Stark satellite, space station and whatnot, and the whole time Moreland's in the background just stalking Peter, going in for the kill because he wants his revenge. On Peter. There's also a really great part in it where this brings back the awesomeness of Peter Parker, where Peter Parker is dying, but he sees one of his students on the side of the street to help him with his homework. He took time out of, spending more time with Mary Jane or Aunt May to help this kid. It was just a few panels, and I really thought that was really great. It showed how awesome Peter Parker is as well.
The part of this story I remember the most is probably just the end where he fights Moreland, where he's like in a coma or something like that, and he fights. This is that before he. So Moreland kills him.
So Moreland beats the shit out of Peter Parker, almost kills him. He eats his eyeball. And
as much as you hate Parker Industries or whatever, at least Spider-Man in Slot's Run never ate someone's face off them in the hospital bed.
And this also what Dan Slott took from it as well. Peter Parker becomes the Other.
That's the thing. Peter Parker basically dies. The Other. Well, he dies, goes in a cocoon, reemerges, has organic web shooters, just like the movie that came out, has big spider stingers that are used probably twice there in the entire time.
I believe he already had organic web shooters by then. Because during the Avengers Assemble storyline and Spectacular Spider-Man, this was also the first Spider Queen storyline.
That was a spectacular.
Well, he had the organic web shooters during Avengers Assemble because during the Spectacular run, they tied in with Avengers Assemble. He became more Man Spider for a few issues because the Spider Queen turned him into it.
Yep.
And Dan Slott took that Spider Queen during the Spider storyline. So he already had the organic web shooters, but then he had like the freaking spikes, which I don't know if spiders have fucking spikes or whatnot.
But I think Kane had those though in the Scarlet Spider story.
Oh yeah, so Dan Slott did take a lot from this run. The one thing Dan Slott was great at is he did divulge into the Spider history and kind of implanted it into his storylines. So people the Spider-Man that were the others was Peter Parker of our universe, Kane, and the MC2 Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Maydays, what we're going to be doing very soon. Peter becomes the other because he in the original Spider-Verse, Morlun kills the MC2 Peter Parker.
For me,
yeah, digressing as always.
Well, the other is basically Spider-Man fights Morlun, he dies, comes back as in a brand new skin, and it's fucking stupid. There is one good scene though where Peter Parker is presumed dead, and Mary Jane's course is like freaking out. Her and Mary Jane, Wolverine goes, hey, now that Peter's gone, you mind like if we go out sometime? And he does it on purpose just to like kind of like get her to kind of like not be all like distraught and stuff. But that's cool. That was a cool scene. I don't even think that was an amazing. I think that was probably in what's his name, Friendly Neighborhood or something like that.
Yeah, I was in one of the core Spider-Man.
Anyway, it was a good scene. After this, we of course the Civil War happens. We get the
when Ron Garney came on.
Ron Garney comes in the book, yeah, and he's a great. I love him.
Unfortunately, of a lot of the Civil War tie-ins, it was really just kind of retelling or almost from panel to panel, and then they added some stuff of the actual Civil War event, like Spider-Man and Captain America fought in Civil War.
Yep.
And then it kind of brought that into the Amazing Spider-Man run, but they kind of expanded upon it more, which was a badass fight.
Yeah. That's great, and that's such a great seeing Spider-Man go toe to toe with Captain America.
Yeah.
Great issue. Garney's art's great in that.
I love Garney's artwork on that.
So we go into Civil War. We have the Iron Spider-Man costume, which I'm not a big fan of, but I think JMS handled it pretty good. He handled the relationship between Tony Stark good. The where he first falls in love with the whole idea of being Tony's apprentice, and then the falling out between them is handled really well. After that, we go into the Back in Black,
which is by far his best storyline.
Yeah, one of the great, really going out. This is towards the end of his run, which I think he's really going out strong. I think it was this whole Back in Black, which could have been a gimmick for the Black. Because it was one time Spider-Man 3 came out where he had the Black.
So this was one of the best fights, and it wasn't even Spider-Man versus Kingpin. It was Peter Parker versus Kingpin, and it's like he's wearing his black suit. He breaks into the prison to get the Kingpin. He's like basically beats the shit and embarrasses the Kingpin in front of all the other inmates. And he's like, Peter's basically, if you do anything against me or my family again, I will kill you. I'll come back in here and kill you.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was just like, it was such a beautifully drawn, he just completely unleashes all his frustrations that have been plaguing him because he reveals his identity and he's on the run and he just takes out on the Kingpin, and it was such a beautifully drawn book.
Which since then there's been a memory wipe in the comics and stuff like that. Yeah. But after that, Kingpin should never fuck with Spider-Man ever again after this happened. He basically held him within an inch of his life, and then the next time
I need to come back and kill you, I've already done it.
Yep.
And now it's just because he basically manhandled him in front of the inmates who can now this fucking dude comes in and beats the shit out of him. He's easy pickings now. And that's basically I might go back and reread this again. And I just thought it was so great.
But as much as I love this story, like the whole like post him revealing his identity during Civil War and this happening, I'm glad it was short lived because although it did have some interesting stories and a few cool issues here and there with like Flash and Jameson and some villains, I don't think I didn't really like the new status quo that much of Peter being outed. So I'm glad it was like it was short and sweet.
Which is why I think they're making the same mistake with the movies as well.
Yep.
They dug themselves a hole in the comic book, and now they're doing it in the movies. We'll see how that turns out. I am always a firm believer that I always liked how the Fantastic Four knew who he was. His Avengers teammates knew who he was. Matt Murdock knew who he was.
Only a handful of people should know who he is. Like you said, Matt
Murdock. They kind of did a Brand New Day with Daredevil too, where they don't know who Matt Murdock is.
Now they're doing it one more day. Daredevil. I don't know what it's about, but we'll see. Well, that kind of, like I said, it was short and sweet for me, this whole status quo, but not so sweet for Peter because during this time, Aunt May gets shot during Back in Black. That's why he has a little confrontation with Kingpin. And then we enter into One More Day, which is the end of JMS's run. From what I understand, there was a mandate to break up. So since he got married, basically, like the issue later, they were like, break these guys up. And people have been trying to figure out a way to break them up. I don't know why. But apparently they have, and the whole, just like putting them back together landed on JMS's shoulders, breaking them up also landed on JMS's shoulders. From what I understand, he had the idea of like involved, of course, Doctor Strange, going back in time and basically making it so I think it was so the drug issue never happened, or something happened basically where Mary Jane and Harry Osborn never broke up, and it was basically so Peter. Almost kind of like how in Spider-Man Life Story, how like Mary Jane and Harry were together for longer than they were in the comics. And whether they stayed together or not, if they were off and on, get divorced, whatever. The thing was Peter never got together with Mary Jane. And that kind of like, led to a series of events happening, which led to where we're at this point. Harry Osborn never dying, basically.
Because they brought back Osborn in Brand New Day.
Yeah. So, but apparently that was too science fiction for Spider-Man, according to Marvel. So they had this whole story about with Mephisto, where basically I'm gonna get shot, and even though they brought people back from the dead plenty of times through science and everything else, apparently healing an old lady was too much for the greatest minds in the Marvel universe, in the greatest source in the universe. I've come to I didn't like the storyline when it first came out. Since then I've come to the realization it's a shitty Spider-Man story, but a great Mephisto story.
And they did try and fix it with One More Day or whatever it was, or
Brand New Day.
Brand New Day, yeah.
Not Brand New Day. I'm sorry. One moment in time.
Yeah. They made it seem like it was Doctor Strange. He went to Doctor Strange to make everyone forget who he was, and then they slowly. I did like Omit better. Then Brand New Day and One More Day, because that shit was just garbage. For me, all of Brand New Day was a giant step back from all the successes that Peter Parker had, all the successes and status quos that Spider-Man had. And I absolutely hated Brand New Day. If anything stop reading Spider-Man, that was it right there.
I didn't mind it. I like a lot of things. I didn't think you needed to break up Mary Jane and Spider-Man to do those stories. In this storyline, in One More Day anyway, the art's great. Drawn and not written by Joe Quesada. Yeah. The art's great. And a lot of people, to this day, like over 20 years later, are still saying that's out of character for Peter. It's very in keeping with Mephisto, and it's also in keeping with Peter Parker. Peter Parker really wants to do the right thing, and Mary Jane's the one that kind of talked him into it, really. Yeah. So, because the whole thing was they believed in themselves that they would find a way past this. They believed in their relationship and in their love that they would find a way through this. So it wasn't yeah. Can you still hear me?
It was at the years of Mary Jane eventually calling Peter a loser, too.
Yeah.
During Dan Slott's training and whatnot.
Basically the storyline was basically a bunch of editors saying, I remember Peter in the 70s. I want to know how he was in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's what the whole point of the story was. But the story is kind of garbage. The art was great. It got people to where people at Marvel thought they wanted Peter. But I don't think – I don't want the same Peter Parker as people at Marvel want. People at Marvel want him as a teenager and a loser. I have a different take
I
on
have
Peter.
all the movies we get and all the new cartoons. He's always a teenager.
Yeah, and obviously JMS didn't want him like that either because he left the book right after this and didn't even want his name on the book of the storyline. So he left the book right after the storyline. This was his. I wouldn't even call it his last story. I would just call it like the last thing he's collecting a check for. So, but
for
that's
me,
what JMS's run.
Pretty much, and like what it came up to was garbage, and it seemed like Spider-Man was still in the New Avengers, and the only saving grace of Spider-Man of that era was Bendis's Spider-Man on New Avengers, where he was still basically writing Spider-Man as if it was brand new prior to Brand New Day. He revealed his identity back to, the heroes and whatnot. And they slowly, with the Brand New Day, made Peter go back to who he was prior. And now it's mostly Dan Slott. But they eventually brought Peter back to where I decided to love Spider-Man again. For me,
JMS's run was basically what got me back to Marvel pretty much. At the time, I think I was reading Daredevil and X-Men, I think, and that was it. Everything else was all DC and everything else. And then when
that was the only era where I kind of preferred DC over Marvel, honestly.
Tim DC,
yeah.
But this run, JMS, Grant Morrison on X-Men, what else was going? Yeah, Bendis on Avengers like that. I was reading a ton of Marvel titles this time, and then I kind of fell off again. As soon as Joe Quesada left, I kind of fell off a little bit, and now I'm back on. I'm pretty back in even pretty much Marvel and DC right now.
Well, for me, for DC, real quick, Flashpoint was my Brand New Day for DC Comics.
Oh, you want your one more day? You mean?
One more day, yeah. They completely destroyed my love for the characters that I love so much, like Red Robin, Tim Drake. The two superheroes that they didn't even need to fix was Tim Drake and Superman, and they did. And I was reading Superman back then. Before that, I was reading Batman, but now they ruined it for me. But anyways, that's just
as far as runs go. Like I said, I think I put this in my top 5 favorite runs of Spider-Man. I'd love to see JMS come back. I don't think he's going to. Stranger things have happened. I think he just started this whole new comic company with Hidalgo Jr. and Axel Alonso. He started writing this book called The Resistance, which I read the first issue was pretty good. And pretty weird that it came out right before this whole pandemic happened. So it's kind of weird.
Honestly, I don't think JMS will come back to the big two. He left on a very big sour note on Marvel.
Yeah.
His Superman Earth 1 books.
Yep.
His Superman run, the Kung Fu Superman roaming the Earth as, whatever it was. Well, he was basically roaming the Earth as Clark Kent or just walking around the world.
You're thinking of he wasn't on New 52. He was before New 52. He was the one who, first of all, he put pants on Wonder Woman, and he also was the one who Superman denounced America as the whole American way thing. He's like, no, I don't belong to one country. I belong to everybody. Yeah,
and he was just like roaming the world. It was so
I love. I
do like how one of our previous Spider-Man artists was on there because he did Spectacular during the post-Clone Saga.
Oh, Ramita?
I can't remember. Not Ramita. I can't remember who the artist was. But there's a scene where Superman's walking around the Earth and world and whatnot, where you see like a Peter Parker holding a camera. I think he's next to Gwen Stacy too. A Gwen Stacy lookalike. Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. They put that in there, but.
I'd like to see JMS come back to either one of the big two, DC or Marvel. I think he's a great writer. I read his biography. It's pretty interesting. I'm not going to get too much into it because I'll go off on a tangent. But, I'd like to see him come back to something. You know what I mean? He's a great writer.
I don't think he will, but
But I don't know. Final thoughts, Mike. What do you think about JMS's run?
I absolutely loved almost every aspect of it. I hated Sin's Past. Whether or not how much he was involved in, One More Day or whatever the hell it was. I'm so angry I can't think of it. I didn't like the ending at all. I think Marvel dug themselves a hole with him revealing his identity to the world. Not so much.
Yeah, nothing to do with Stracynski though.
That, but overall, definitely in my top 10 of probably my top 5. Yeah, I would say yeah.
For me, it's definitely my top 5. I think it's I think it's just as consistent as Slott's run. Not as long as Slott's run, but it's definitely like a a good first half, and then it kind of like, gets a little rocky, and then kind of falls down, and then levels out a little bit like Slot's run. But I think the good parts of JMS's are better than Slot's good parts, I think.
It definitely outshines the stinkers he had.
Yeah.
I'm feeling that Spencer
Yep.
is gonna be just like JMS with his magnitude that he's gonna bring to Peter Parker, bringing him back to what Spider-Man that we love so much about, post Classic Spidey, the whole era that we love, or the JMS Spider-Man run. I think Spencer's gonna have that same effect.
I don't feel like any Spider-Man writer leaves on a high note. I don't think it seems like they all kind of.
Still waiting for that Kindred storyline to come out. Granted, the COVID-19 put that a little slower on that, but Jesus, we've been waiting for almost 50 issues. Or how many issues has been with him?
But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for our Run Zip episode on JMS. J. Michael Stracynski, Amazing Spider-Man. Half it's Volume 2, the other half goes back to Volume 1, but it's still Volume 2. It's 500. Yeah, great run, guys. Good episode.
Yeah, I'm glad we're back. We got a few episodes in. We're gonna do Spider-Girl soon too. I kind of got a little more jilt in my steps, so hopefully I can get Golden Axe done. I'm gonna say tomorrow because today's Thursday when we're recording this, but I'm gonna get Golden Axe.
The only way to break Mike out of his shell is with a hammer made of Spider-Man.
Yeah. Back, baby. I'm back, and I'm gonna fall down.
All right, guys, that's gonna do it for this episode. We'll see you next time. Remember to like and subscribe.
No!